Here now, here we are, and introducing Steve Struggle, a veteran of the Black Panther Party, and engaged in the political developments of the United States of America. And now, we have reports of increasing xenophobia in the United States.
Yes, yes. Welcome to all of our viewers. Please like, please subscribe, please share this broadcast with friends and allies so we can get the word out. Yeah, I wanted to share with everybody an incident that occurred on the Mexico border yesterday. I'm recording on the 20th of April, looking at the Daily Bruin from UCLA. And they're reporting that a UCLA student was detained at the U.S.-Mexico border. They're not saying why. No one seems to know why. But this is a fear that has been spreading among the United States that I know of firsthand, hearing it from people who are student age, like, high school, college, and people who are here legally, who have status, who migrated here, who have green cards, or even have been given naturalized citizenship, or whose children were born here. People are fearing what just happened at the Mexico border with a UCLA grad student. We're not sure if they were an activist. We're not sure what was going on, but when people leave the country and they want to come back, people are fearing that they'll be detained at the border and then deported. And this is not an isolated fear. It is quite common now. I've been thinking about this, and currently I'm thinking that what Trump has done is, or the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, has developed a real nativist, white supremacist developing a culture and the political and judicial arm to try and make it stick. So you have the raids on migrant people's homes and people breaking their windows out of their cars and grabbing them. There have been videos on YouTube showing this.
Hmm.
You have the attacks on Black literature like Maya Angelou and other Black authors being pulled from the shelves of the libraries. This happened this week. No, excuse
Hmm.
me, a couple weeks ago. Pulled from the shelves of libraries of U.S. military academies, saying that they are radical, and their whole attempt to um, oppose what they call diversity, inclusion, and equity within the U.S. government and within organization that the federal government funds. Yeah, you see it in the support for white nationalists in South Africa, attacking the South African government for the lie of attacking white citizens and urging white Afrikaner migration to the United States. So all of this, people might not know is occurring. People around the world might not know is occurring. But it's a movement, a nativist movement that you also see in some parts of the world, unfortunately. I see a lot on from Australia, for example. I see a lot on the Telegram channels there. Just anti-migrant, anti-non-native born. Well,
Hmm.
for whatever reason your migration is due to, anti-Chinese just because you're Chinese, for example, in Australia, and that's picking up. I wouldn't say it's picking up steam, but Trump is being very persistent about practices and policies that are xenophobic, uh, white nativist culture centered, and basically trying to rewrite history to let it be seen that nothing occurred here, that the native people never were, that there never was genocide, there never was forced movement into camps and reservations. I guess black people just showed up one day and start singing and dancing or whatever. I'm not sure. I mean, he doesn't have a black narrative yet. He doesn't know he doesn't have one yet.
Yeah.
And they tried to ban Black History Month in schools, and I think they were told don't touch that.
Uh,
That's them. But they really want to eliminate anything that's not white centered.
yeah.
And I want people to know that is the social um social fascist, the social movement of Trump. His cabinet, it's all white. I mean, he didn't even
Mm,
try, and it would be different. It was all black, but he didn't even
mm,
try to put black people in his cabinet.
mm,
Beside Rubio, I know he's doing Latin. She's very much. I want people to know this. That people who live here, who are either native, who migrated here legally, or children who are migrated, who were brought here legally with their parents, they're very scared to leave
mm.
in this situation at the border.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and would give rise to that fear being legitimate. And one more thing, just so people also know who are traveling, we receive reports from colleagues that when you enter the border, I'm not sure from Mexico, but I know from Canada that your cell phone is going to be inspected,
Mm,
that what's on your cell phone is going to be looked at.
mm,
And that going into Canada, we've heard that's not happening. But coming from Canada in the United States, cell phones are being inspected and they're being gone through for pictures, contacts, etc.
mm,
And Border Patrol is doing this, and previously they have not done that.
mhm. Yeah, this reminds me of when Trump was celebrating his electoral victory, and he was talking about how the USA is one nation, one faith. And guess, like three guesses, which faith he's talking about. And
Right,
the only concession he would make, to this xenophobic scheme of his is when he's talking with about Zionism, and then he changes, the discourse, a little bit, he talks about Judeo-Christianity. And the
right,
Zionists themselves, are into it, like they're into Judeo-Christianity, they're buddy-buddy, with the Christian imperial uh, Christendom, as it's called from time to time. And this is this form of xenophobia is affecting me personally, because I cannot go into the United States. If I go to a crossing point in the United States, then I can be put into prison for a month. I
right.
accidentally, got myself caught into a situation like that when I was coming back from Palestine one year, and I was transiting through New York because that's the ticket I got. So I figured, no problem. I'll just, transit, and go to the transit, like plane and get on and leave for Montreal. But no, in New York City, you have no transit, section there of the airport. You have to go out, pick up your baggage, and reload your baggage onto the next flight, go through inspection again.
Wow.
Even though, your baggage, did not
Yeah.
explode on the way there to the New York in the first place. And I was held there for 6 hours, and then actually after a while, the agents who were rather sympathetic, to me, came and said they were under obligation, to put chains on me as well, so they
Wow.
chained my ankle
Wow.
to the foot of the bench that I was sitting on, for 6 hours. So
Wow.
then they took me to an airplane afterwards, deported. I missed my flight, of course, but they deported me on another flight afterwards. And I go to sit down, and then I realize I don't have my passport. They took my passport. So I go to ask for my passport. And the two security agents, that had brought me there to the airport, to the air, to the airplane in the first place, rushed to the door of the plane, to prevent me from, escaping out into the United States of America again, when I went to ask, a flight attendant, where my passport was and when I would be getting it back. And they freaked out. Said, no, after the plane leaves, then you can get your passport back. Okay, fine, as long as I get back to Montreal. But
Wow.
that was
Okay.
weird. That was very weird. They're
Well,
sort
yeah,
of
I think
paranoid.
that's an important story to share
Yeah.
because there's this belief that the America's a land of milk and honey, and actually it's a land of sour milk and sour milk and and diabetes. That's what it's a land of.
Uh, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
has diabetes, and the milk is sour.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
everybody has diabetes.
yeah,
I mean,
but
people. I mean, I'm gonna tell you,
yes, it's
everybody is
incredible, the
diabetic.
health level of the United States
It's
Americans,
horrible.
the life expectancy has declined in the United
Yeah, and
States.
that when life expectancy. This is something that okay. A few months ago, it's still going on now, by the way. There's a move by Boris Johnson and the EU to convince European countries and EU members to increase their defense spending a couple percent.
Uh,
This came from Trump. And Boris Johnson was telling them in a meeting somewhere, and I saw it in the Daily Mail, that tabloid. Basically, why don't you just get your people to be like Americans? He said this.
hmm,
They don't. We have 4 weeks of vacation. They have 2. They don't have any sick leave by the government. He said this,
hmm,
Boris Johnson. So he looks at Americans as really being sucked into. I mean, that the culture of the country is so awful. That's a model for Europe now.
hmm,
Yeah, yeah. So you talk about the healthcare you're talking about. Why? There is no healthcare system here for
hmm,
anybody.
hmm.
Unless you have a job, you are SOL, brother.
Wow. Huh.
That's why people don't quit the job. That because
Uh,
Medicare just isn't good enough. I mean, the government program when you're
uh,
65 is just lousy. So there's no health care. And
uh,
Boris Johnson is trying to get European countries to take up the American model. So keep that in mind.
yeah. Uh,
Like I said, the milk is sour and everybody has diabetes.
yeah. Well, even here in Canada, we have free health care for
Yeah.
everyone.
So
Even
I'm
for
saying,
refugee
and
applicants,
no, nobody, no, there is no
immigrants,
free health care
everybody.
unless you're in maybe a state like California, maybe New York, maybe Illinois, that has some kind of social base. I mean, what they call a social net. There is nothing for you
Yeah.
unless you're on a program like welfare, something that incorporates some kind of health care component, and then they may make you work for the welfare.
Huh. Work for the
Those are
welfare.
dedicated.
What's that? I've never heard of this.
Oh, no, no, no. This is quite common in the red states. They'll say, "Oh, you have benefits. We're gonna give you some food stamps or um electronic benefits transfer EBT, or this comes from the government." Let me give you an example. In San Francisco, California, if you want social aid, social services, you have to be drug tested. This happened a few years. It was passed by the people of San Francisco, voted in. If you are homeless, if you want welfare, you must pass a drug test. No
Hmm.
else in the country. Now that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, and also there are many states where if you get welfare or some kind of food stamps, you must do volunteer service to earn it. You have to work for your benefits. We're not giving you nothing. We're not giving you a handout. You have to work. It like you're just sitting around lazy and just like you're sitting at home in poverty waiting for the check to come in. It is
Hmm.
a stereotype of black people, of the fat of the obese black woman with 5 children driving a Cadillac, driving down the street collecting
Huh.
welfare checks. This is a racist myth
Yeah.
about black Americans. The world might not know this, but this exists.
Hmm.
Even though millennials and black middle class might all that doesn't exist anymore. Yes, it does. And there's
Hmm.
some parts of the world in the United States, and even now there's moves in Congress to make people work for food stamps.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so
United
it's
States is it's so weird. It sounds so weird to me, because
It
that
is.
that doesn't happen here, and even in Canada, like we don't have that. And in
No, I
terms of
know,
the
I know.
healthcare system, as I've mentioned, to friends, quite often, if I was an American, I'd be dead 3 times,
Yeah,
because
oh no,
I wouldn't be
four
able to afford
times,
the healthcare, in the United States.
5 times, because you don't get no health care. You might go, I mean, like some states have something, like California has something, but some states have nothing, or
Hmm.
it's so little. And the federal government, you have to be a certain program they have, and you have to be on a program of disability. Then you will get some kind of health care coverage. But if you're not on
Hmm.
a program of disability, SSI, SSA, whatever, you don't have no health care.
Hmm.
You have to have a job with health care to give you health care. And once you retire or quit your job or get fired, you don't have no health care. So
Hmm.
it's a land of sour milk and diabetes.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. I'm telling y'all the truth. I will not make it up. And so don't be thinking everybody here is just, everything's wonderful and no, 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 no,
Hmm.
no, 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 no,
And then
no.
they talk about dreamers, coming to the United
Oh,
States, dreaming of a good life. What kind of a good life
no.
is that? Like,
That's I think the dreamer thing is kind of over myself. Well, at least with Trump in power, the dreamers can just forget it. I'm not saying they shouldn't try. I'm not saying their work is not meaningful. Their desire is not meaningful. But it's and even then, who, your dream. I I got your dream. I got it. But where does that dream fit in the whole scheme of things now? Trump doesn't want you here. He doesn't want you here. His government and his movement doesn't want you here. And even those who are here, like the blacks and the Indians, the Native Americans, are told to sit down and shut up
mm,
and don't and to stop rocking the boat.
mm,
And they do that by attacking programs like any program that Biden started called the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity, which is supposed to watch over inequality. They want to eliminate those programs. So there is rampant inequality and pit black people and Latin people against Asians and whites.
mm,
They want us
uh,
that no, that's that they said it. The Asians and whites are oppressed by blacks and Mexicans and others who are demanding rights.
mm. That
And that
reminds me
came
of
from
the black officer who was dismissed. The chief of staff of the military, officer, was dismissed because he was implementing DEI.
right. Well, basically, he's just saying, I want to make sure. Basically, DEI is affirmative action. It is an administrative tool to oversee glaring inequality in the workplace, to stop lawsuits, and to make sure that no one can openly discriminate. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when they attack those programs, they're promoting open discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. There's no need to have any programs that overlook rampant discrimination. That's all because of U.S. history. That's just because of U.S. history that these programs exist. And liberals wanted to incorporate the civil rights movement into government policy. That's what that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And so Trump is hostile to it. Like I said, I'm not saying he has to have black people on his program. He had no black people on his cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
None. It's all white. It looks like Australia.
Mm-hmm. Another weird thing that we've talked about before in the United States is this thing called a water tax. Water tax or water rental payment, some sort of thing like that. We don't have that here in Canada. Nobody, no city, nowhere, no how, but people have to pay for water. Water is a human right, like it's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
provided by
Oh
the
no.
city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet
Yeah.
landlords are taking, like squeezing money out of, like
Oh yeah.
renters
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
water that they get from the city anyway. Like I don't get
Yeah.
it.
Well,
How can they
at,
get
at
away with
one,
something like that? Capitalism in the
well,
United States is like
I,
over the top.
it's over the top. At one time, tenants paying for water in major cities was unusual. That was quite unusual. But there were landlords who did it, and now it becomes commonplace that you pay for water, and there is no way for them to meter the water. I'll tell you how that works. I was in an apartment once, and they charged me a water bill, and there was no way to meter it.
Mm,
Water is not metered. Electricity is metered, gas is metered. That they can meter that. They cannot meter water in the sense of the water company. If it's a okay, if it's a city, the city controls water delivery. The cities provides it pretty much for free, as I understand it, but maybe not. I could be wrong about that. But if it's a private company, they can meter how much water the building uses. Let's say an apartment building, or you have a duplex, or even a single family home. They can meter that. They sure the hell can, but they cannot meter an apartment complex. No, they cannot, because one pipe comes in, many pipes feed into a drain system, which is covered by the sewer department. So there's no way they can really meter in an apartment water consumption. No, there isn't. They just pluck from air some price and they charge it to you. This guy was charging, how much was he charging us a month? He was charging us $70 a month for water. Yes, in an apartment. 70, 70. And you could not contest it because there was no meters. I just left the apartment. Yes, I'm not making this up. I'm making the number. It was 70 per month. Per month in an apartment. There's no way you use that much water. You wash your hands, you wash your dishes. There's no washing machine, so you can't use that to use water. You take a shower, you wash your dishes. You may take a bath. You flush the toilet, right? That's water, right? In an apartment. That's it, right? You don't have a water hose to wash your car in an apartment. It's based sink, toilet, sink in the bathroom, wash dishes. That's it. There's no way you're using $70. $70. Yes, $70. 70. Just being ripped off. So people, again, it's not the land of milk. It's not the land of milk and honey. It's the land of sour milk and diabetes.
So when are the Americans going to revolt against all this? Aren't Trump supporters, getting disillusioned already?
Well, they're getting disillusioned. And they still, what did Trump do 2 weeks ago? Friday night, what did he do? He went to the World Wrestling Federation to get some backup. I'm sorry, man. A lot of people, I'm not saying people are brainwashed or stupid, but there's really a belief in the Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid tastes good, so they keep drinking it. And hopefully. I hate to say it. Hopefully, when the tariffs kick in, they'll just say, "Whoa, wow, this is kind of expensive here." My avocados went from $5 a bag to 12. I guess I can't buy avocados anymore. So that's what's going to happen. But when you have a society when that's all that you ever known, and the norm is, well, you can't be city hall, so just don't.
I have an example here of Americans revolting.
Say too much. Just be happy with what you. Hopefully that. I can hear you.
I have a photo of the Brown University students, who won their protest for divestment of Zionist sources into the university. And
wow, that's a major victory.
Yes, major victory. Yeah,
the Brown students actually.
I have it here.
Didn't the Brown students? Didn't they negotiate? Didn't they actually stop the encampments last year and move to negotiations? I think they did. Yeah, Brown was that one school that did that. Yeah,
I think so. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Yeah. See, here they are. They're celebrating here. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's a big victory. That's a big one. Yeah. So
they're defying Trump's, cutback, of funding, to the university institutions.
Yeah. Trump wants to silence everybody by cutting back the money. That's how he is. He wants to shut you up by
Hmm.
making you by cutting your money. Yep, what they
Wow.
do. Yep,
So it's that this article, like, and this is the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, reporting on this. This is reporting from, into the, Israeli political culture in the English media there, the Jerusalem Post, yes. But nonetheless, it's getting into Israeli society more than it's even getting into American, journalism.
right. I think
And
so.
here we
I
are.
think so.
Dozens
Yeah,
of rabbis and cantors who graduated from Brown University have a message for their alma mater's president. Do not cede control to those who weaponize anti-Semitism. So right then and there, they're denying, that the motivation for solidarity with the Palestinian people is anti-Semitism.
there
No,
you
it is
go.
not.
It's not. It is
Yeah.
not. It is not. It is not. And when we hear anti-Semitic views at demonstrations, we must denounce it. We must
Yes.
denounce anti-Jewish anti-Jew. Oh no, we did not. Get out of here. That's not
Yeah.
what's happening. That kind of thing. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's actually the main narrative now is equating pro-Palestinian with anti-Semitic. It's
Yeah.
like it's like it's like feces and smell. Feces is
Mm.
going to smell. Urine is going to smell. So therefore, anti-Semitism is linked to pro-Palestine. It's like one next to the other. It is there is no separation anymore. There's no
Yeah.
separation in any news article. It's
Yeah.
anti-Semitism pro Palestine. Yeah,
Yeah.
the narrative
Yeah.
has changed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm contesting that. I can show you. Here it is. I'll share this as well with you. Huh? I am suing the Zionist Federation Combined Jewish Appeal and the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs of Canada because of their discrimination. There's a Jewish community center here in Montreal for Jewish people, hosting a Holocaust Museum, Jewish Public Library with my 4 books in there and everything. And they won't let me in, you know? So I'm suing them on the basis of the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms of Quebec here, and also the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which doesn't allow for discrimination on the basis of nationality or political uh, consciousness, political identity. And they're discriminating against me for both reasons. One, because I'm a Jewish Bundist, and because, I have an anti-Zionist position. So they can't do that. It's illegal. And I'm suing them on constitutional grounds here. This is what we have for a constitution. It's just a charter. But nonetheless, we have it and it works. And I'm taking the Zionists, to the Human Rights Commission. And if they don't, pick it up, then I'll take it to the Court of Quebec. But I'm suing them. And I've
There you
got,
go.
like all the facts here, like I've got so much, proof. I'm just scrolling it, so people can read if they want to by stopping the screen, but here's, my proof. I'm, come from Jewish refugee parents, from Poland. It's right there.
Right.
And, I'm registered, Holocaust survivor. Here's my parents getting married in a refugee camp, with German. And here's a letter from the big modern Orthodox synagogue here in Montreal, affirming that I'm a Jewish person. And then here's a previous judge, who got me out of prison, for violating a police condition that I, couldn't go back to the Jewish community center. And she said, yes, of course you can go back to protest, and that I'm a Jewish Bundist, which is legitimate, Jewish identity. It's all there. That's translated into English, and the original in French is coming up here as well. So here's all the proof, and this is, listed, on the web, at the academia.edu site under jurisprudence. More and more proof. Got
There you
42
go.
pages of stuff here, like, and I'm suing them. I'm not going to let them get away with this. And then here is, here's, the Jewish Public Library has my books in there, like, would the Jewish Public Library, carry, anti-Semitic books? No. So, like legitimate, stuff happening there. And then here's the court's ruling. that the police conditions imposed on me that, I couldn't go back, to the Jewish Community Center, canceled. Annulé means canceled in French. Like I showed this to them, but they still wouldn't let me in. And then they lied and said it wasn't the Jewish Community Center, even though they're registered as such here. Centre communautaire. Uh, and it's a Jewish, in French, it explains that this is a Jewish community center, and the security manager, I'll have him on video saying this is not a community center, you can't come in, it's private, like they're registered as a community center, blatant contradiction, no way can they win in court, I'm really anxious to get this, into the court in front of a judge, and then get a ruling, to the effect that they did discriminate against me. And then hopefully they have to pay me the amount that I'm asking for. I'm asking damages, like in principle, damages, moral damages for 50,000 and personal damages for another 50,000 for being discriminated against and defamed. And, they try to sort of, accuse me of hate crime and everything like that. No way am I going to take that. This is the way you fight back. And the young Jewish, like opposition in the United States of America is very strong, stronger than in Canada even. And they're taking on the whole Jewish establishment there. The youth are doing a Jewish revolution against Zionist control, domination, dictatorship over the Jewish communities. In the United States, foremost, with the Jewish Voice for Peace, and Not in Our Name, Code Pink, even, Bend the Arc, and If Not Now are the major organizations, the movements there for each of the generations. So, this is the development, that has to be featured, that has to be sort of brought to people's attention, but it's not being done so. Why? Because it's Jewish. They can't figure out, that Jewish is not the same as Zionist. Just because the Zionists call themselves Jewish and they call the state Jewish doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. More than 55% of Jewish people don't live there. So, we're not responsible for that mess there. Now it's our responsibility to correct it and overcome the Zionist control and the Zionist state. But, the Zionists are just one faction of the Jewish people. And the
Right.
major faction of the Jewish people, the Jewish Bund, was destroyed by the Nazi occupation in Europe. So, to say that we're absent, and therefore we don't have anything to say because we're not, a mass movement anymore is so false, because it wasn't the Jewish people who created that condition. It was the Nazis. And the Jewish Bund still speaks on behalf of the Jewish people as the major tendencies historically. And we denounce Zionism for that reason, because Zionism is not anti-fascist. They made deals with the fascists, to protect their own members. So Zionism is not an anti-fascist movement, even though they claim that they're defending the Jewish people. It's not true. And the Jewish Bund, is here and now to say
There you
so.
go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. So, like we know what we're doing. It's
Right.
just a matter of continuing our work, because eventually,
Right.
people are going to realize that they've been lied to, and young Jewish
Yeah.
people hate
Yeah.
being
And
lied to.
that's a hell of a record. When you realize you've been lied to, everybody who's had the experience, imagine when it's a collective awakening. That's what we need is a collective awakening.
Yeah,
And once we have that, things will change quickly.
yeah.
We
I
need a
guess that's
collective
why they won't
awakening.
let me into the Jewish Community Center because I might actually talk to somebody who would like to know what the truth is.
No, no, no. That's why.
Yeah,
That's why they don't want the collective awakening. They know they're criminals. They know they're hiding
yeah.
something. They hide behind the law under the book. But we need a whole new way of living, a much different system, and we can have something better than this. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, great to speak with you, Steve. And until
Thank
next
you.
week, we
Until
are
next
the
week.
here now, and we ask you to break the censorship on the opposition, the revolutionary opposition to capitalism, to US xenophobia, and to Zionism. And we continue. Thanking you for your attention, and until next week.